Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. So, I have a question for you. What language did the builders of Stonehenge speak? You want the answer? So do I. So, let's listen to Let Them Talk TV. Let's go.
Today on Let Them Talk TV, what do archaeology and DNA tell us about the people of Stonehenge and what language they spoke? Who came before them and who replaced them? And from where did they arrive? In this video, we're going back almost 1 million years. It's a fascinating topic, I promise you, so let's investigate.
Love it.
This is me with my brother, and we're standing on...
It was him all along. It was him with his brother. Solved. It was Londoners.
Stonehenge. Nowadays, you're not allowed anywhere near the stones. They're all ditches, fences, and security guards. But these were the heady days of glam rock, and these certainly are the most glamorous of rocks. I've always loved Stonehenge, these mysterious megaliths resting majestically on a windy plain in Wiltshire. And over the course of my lifetime, a combination of archaeology and DNA has shed new light on the site. We know when it was built, we know how it was built, we know why it was built, we know where they quarried the stones, we know its function, and...
I would personally, just to be a little pedantic, because I mean, it's my middle name and you subscribed, so what you want from me, you know I'm pedantic. Do we actually know why they built it? We have a good approximation.
And by analysing animal bone and pottery fragments from the vicinity, we know quite literally what they ate for breakfast. If you're interested in holding a Stone Age dinner party, you can have boiled pork and beef, hazelnuts, crab apples, berries, but no vegetables. Despite all this rich knowledge of their daily life and diet, the language has remained elusive. Yeah. We don't have the voice of their civilization. It's the missing piece of the jigsaw.
If it could even be classified as a civilization, but then again, that's once again being particularly pedantic also because these days archaeologists, to my anger and frustration, decided to even ditch the word civilization because nobody can give it a proper definition. I think it's wrong, by the way. Bad archaeologists, bad. I played all Civilization games from 1 to 7. 1 in floppy disks format for an Amiga 500 Commodore Amiga. Anyways, Neanderthals. Let's go. That's me. I mean, the hair, sort of.
Start at the beginning. The first Britons were Neanderthals. Archaeological research hasn't found any skeletons, but it has unearthed stone tools and footprints from between 950,000 and 700,000 years ago in Norfolk and Suffolk. In Swanscombe in Kent, they found the skeleton of a female Neanderthal 400,000 years old. The earliest evidence of our species is from a jawbone also found in Kent and dated to 40,000 years ago. Has Britain been continuously inhabited since then? No, it hasn't. And the reason is weather.
Oh, I can relate to that. As someone who moved to the UK when I was in my late teens and spent a couple of years there, which is how I picked up my English, yeah, I mean, coming from the Mediterranean Sea, that was a shocker. But I did enjoy the people, because I freaking love English people. Freaking love you guys. You're great. You bloke watching this, you chaps, you muppets. You're great. Freaking love the Brits.
You think English weather is bad now with the pitter-patter of its tiny rain and its chilly April mornings. But shifting temperatures meant that Britain had an inhospitable climate over many millennia.
That's fascinating, actually.
The last ice age came to an end one sunny morning about 12,000 years ago. And it's no coincidence that Britain has only been continuously inhabited for about 12,000 years. The Celts, the Anglo-Saxons, the Normans, they are all fresh off the boat, relatively. So the ancestors of everyone on these shores today emigrated here at some point in history. And
yeah, I could say Brittonic, if you're English, because of course British includes English, Welsh, Scottish, and if you mean British Isles, of course Irish, right? Oftentimes people, when they say you have a British accent, actually annoys me when people say, when they hear an English accent, and they say, oh, I love the British accent. I'm like, brother, a Scottish accent is a British accent as much as an English accent is a British accent. Just so we're clear. I don't. It's maybe let's not. It just annoys me. I don't want to tell. There is a difference between England, the United Kingdom, the British Isles, and Great Britain. All four are different. I don't know. It's just a pet peeve of mine.
Got to be careful what I say, because I mentioned this in my video about the Celts in Britain, that we are at one point or another all immigrants here, and this ruffled a few feathers. We're not
all immigrants, but you are. How is he an immigrant? No, he sounds as English as it gets. I don't think this guy is an immigrant. Let me see. Lost me, we're all immigrants, thinks you effing idiot. Well, it's politics, that's why. I think the reason is not because people, then so are the Native Americans. Sure, I mean, yes, of course. I'm just reading the comments here, but yeah, by the same logics, then yes, everyone is an immigrant at one point. So yeah, so are the Native Americans, that's right. I think people get pissed because in this awful political climate these days, you get extremists on both sides before you say anything. You got the ones that don't want to see anything but white people, and then you've got the ones that instead hate everything that is white. How about we don't hate anyone? How about that? But yeah, no, I get it. It's because it sounds like a virtual signal, man. But I don't know, this guy sounds fine to me. He doesn't seem like a lunatic. It doesn't seem like a lunatic who hates everything English and European. It doesn't sound like that, so I have no problems with him.
We're not all immigrants, but you are. Moving on, how did those blue-eyed hunter-gatherers of 12,000 years ago get here?
How?
Well, it wasn't by boat. Britain was once connected to mainland Europe. The area that linked the two was called Doggerland, a huge expanse of habitable terrain. It was rich in wildlife, and it connected what is now the eastern coast of Britain all the way to the modern-day Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. So those early settlers simply walked across. Britain became an island about 5000 BC.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. What is it with the Stonehenge, man? Come on. It's just a joke. Let the hair grow, man. What are you doing? I mean, look at this. Look at this. Rookie numbers.
Simply walked across.
But before we do that, massive announcement. Check this out. You're going to love it. As many of you know, or at least I think you know, I've been writing a book, my new journey into becoming an author. I've mentioned this on a few videos and on X, but this book was indeed crowdfunded. Now, any person who has donated or will donate to the crowdfunding will receive a full audiobook, and this is crowdfunding exclusive. So, as a way to say thank you to the people that have donated and supported my dream of becoming an author, if you have a minimum of $5 donation, you will receive the entirety of the audio file of the book, recorded by me with my voice, no AI involved, as a crowdfunding exclusive reward. This applies retroactively, so for all 262 donors that I've had so far, you'll get this, and anyone who decides to donate $5 or more, thank you very much, never expected, always appreciated, then you will be guaranteed a audio file of the book by the end of the crowdfunding campaign. Important, once the crowdfunding campaign is over, this audiobook version will not be made for sale. So this is once again crowdfunding exclusive. It's a perk. If you're interested in the audiobook, click the link in the description, and thank you so much.
Britain became an island about 5000 BC when it succumbed to the rising tides of the North Sea, caused by melting glaciers cutting us off from the continent. The population was likely very small, with scattered tribes across Britain. We have no idea what language or languages they spoke. DNA evidence suggests they were genetically similar to populations from northeastern Europe.
From northeastern Europe. Neolithic farmers from 4000 BC. You see, I appreciate that the guy uses BC. That's another pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it. If this offends you, I don't know what to tell you. I just tell you how it is. I just say, I don't hide what I like and what annoys me. BC, before Christ, AD, Anno Domini Nostri Jesu Christi, is the way. I love it. It sounds so much better than BCE CE. It just annoys me. I hate BCECE. I refuse to say it. If you want to say it, and you're like, no, I love it. It's music to my ears. BCECE. Go ahead. Say it. Say it before you eat your meal. I refuse, however, and I love BCAD. Thereby, when I see someone do this, I appreciate it. Okay? Fine? All right.
Stonehenge arrived about 4000 BC.
That's a cool house.
These were Neolithic peoples who brought farming to Britain.
Yeah.
Work on Stonehenge began around 3100 BC with a circular ditch and so-called bluestones from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles, 250 kilometres away. But one stone, known as the altar stone, was transported from the north of Scotland. Around 2500 BC, the large sarsen stones were quarried locally before being erected on the site.
Quarried locally, I mean, it does make sense if you have... It might have to do with the choice of the placement as well. I mean, at the end of the day, this happens in Ireland as well, but there are some locations in Nordic countries too. There are some locations that have a spiritual / governmental position, in the sense that sometimes some areas are chosen because they signify or convey power, and at the same time, maybe they have a good auditory placement. They're good for people to be able to hear. It's great for gathering. It looks pretty. There are a lot of reasons that go into choosing specific locations for power. And I personally have no questions when it comes to the fact that this was built to represent power, among other things. This is for power. This is by the elites, for the elites. Why they did it exactly, we might need a dedicated video for that. Not that I know the answer, but I have my theories, of course. Still, the fact that you had local availability probably played a role. I mean, that's what the Romans did. Of course, the Romans, compared to these guys, are the future. They are futuristic, clearly. But then again, it's interesting because if you think about the settlement of Parisi, which is the Celtic original name of Paris, which the Romans renamed Lutetia, and then the French are like, no, screw that, we're going to call it Paris. Paris, just, kind of bringing back the original Celtic name. When it comes to Parisi, a lot of the stones that the Romans used to build and expand the settlement from an urban standpoint were quarried underneath it, which is how you get, for instance, at least the first layers of the Labyrinth of Paris. They're that old. And then medieval people were like, oh, that's awesome. Let's dig another few hundred meters, chambers and corridors, and just let's make it as intricate as possible, because oblivion.
And I'm not going to cover the whole history of Stonehenge's construction and its function. That's far beyond the scope of this video, and there are, of course, there are many videos and books dedicated to this. I will, though, just dispel one popular myth that it was built by the Druids. No, references to the Druids occur around 400 BC.
They probably the Druids that used it, though. So it might have had an attribution to them at that point. Do you remember that the Druids in England, in Britannia, should I say, were seen in high regards as fulcrums of knowledge and culture, even by the continental Celts? So much so that Celtic Druid wannabes, Druid students who wanted to become Druids from Gaul, went to Britannia to study with the Celts over there, because they were considered to have a deeper knowledge, an ancestral connection. Who knows, maybe they did use that site
2,000 years after the main construction of the site. So we know when it happened, but where were our Neolithic stone shovers from? For that, we need to look at the DNA evidence. And that tells us they came from Anatolia. That's modern-day Turkey. They brought...
You know, that doesn't surprise me because we recently settled a massive debate on my channel when it comes to the origins and specific the ethnicity of Carthaginians and the Egyptians. When it comes to the Egyptians, I've had massive clashes with the Afrocentric community because, yeah, I don't support the idea that the Egyptians were all black like some people do in the Afrocentric community, and because of that, they think I am some kind of, I don't know, racist, bigot, whatever, who cares? But the reality is, no, I care about the truth, and even though there was 100% a component of black people within the Egyptians, particularly when you look at Upper Egypt and closer to the areas closer to the connection with the Kingdom of Kush, the borders to the Kingdom of Kush, probably there would have been a higher percentage of black people comparatively. But when you look at the Delta, there is no question that the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians had nothing to do with the hinterland in general, and it had more to do, and had anything to do instead with indigenous North African DNA, indigenous North African populations mixed with Middle Eastern, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and whatnot. And when it comes to Carthaginians, we once again, I just wanted to debate. Personally, I started it as a academic debate, but it escalated. Anyways, some people are in cults, I don't know what to tell you. But when it comes to the Carthaginians, we debated, were they black, were they Semitic? I tended to stand with the Semitic idea, and the original core definitely was Semitic. But by the time, this is when it was the Phoenicians, the Phoenician colony of Carthage. But by the time they become the Carthaginians that will have war with Rome, their DNA, the majority of it, became the same as, or very similar to, the Anatolians and the Greeks. Isn't that fascinating? Similar to the inhabitants of the island of Sardinia. So at the end of the day, we're both wrong. They weren't black, the Carthaginians, but they weren't Semitic anymore by the time they became Carthage. By then, maybe they were still as Semitic core when it comes to some of the elites. I don't dispute that, even though we don't have much evidence for that. I mean, the Romans would destroy Carthage. I mean, the Romans won, so there is that. But the majority, same as what he's saying, but this is why I'm connecting to it. Like, it makes sense. There must have been a very prevalent DNA in the Mediterranean basin, and then as it expanded, it reaches Britannia. Doesn't surprise me.
Agriculture to Europe, and ultimately Britain replacing the hunter-gatherers that preceded them.
Yeah.
As for their genetic makeup, they carried about 80% of their DNA from these early European farmers from Anatolia, and about 20% Western hunter-gatherer ancestry.
Interesting.
The DNA also tells us that they were darker skins than later arrivals into Britain, so they look more like me than Prince Harry.
I do think that the kind of dark skin that we are talking is kind of his, yes, rather than being, once again, because dark skin can be, I mean, anything can be dark skin if you don't specify it. Maybe a little bit of an olive undertone, as we see.
But how did they get here? Look at this map. Around 7000 to 6000 BC, early farmers from Anatolia began moving westwards and northwards into Europe. They didn't travel in a single wave, but spread in different directions. Some moved through the Balkans into Central and Western Europe, while others followed the Mediterranean coast, hugging the coastline into what is now Greece, Italy, southern France, and the Iberian Peninsula.
Yeah.
From there, farming eventually reached Britain around 4000 BC. Most of the people who settled in Britain seem to have descended from those who had taken this Mediterranean route. Well, okay, that's the migratory history out of the way. The next question is, what
the language, let's go.
languages did they speak? First, we need to answer the question, was it an Indo-European language? And these are the Indo-European language spoken today in Europe and Asia. It includes English, French, Russian, Hindi, Persian. But where did it all begin? Of course, the English spoken in Britain now is not a direct descendant of those Neolithic
Obviously not,
farmers
no.
from Anatolia. That population was replaced.
Yeah.
And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But where is the home of the Proto-Indo-European language? And does it have a bearing on our story? Now, there are three main theories. The first is the steppe or Kurgan hypothesis. It states that Proto-Indo-European originated on the Pontic-Caspian steppe in what is now Ukraine and southern Russia. And that occurred around 4000 to 3000 BC. And that it was later spoken and spread by the Yamnaya culture. However, interesting as this is, the DNA evidence tells us that the builders of Stonehenge came from Anatolia. So let's look at the other theories. The second theory is known as the Anatolian hypothesis. Sounds promising. It was first put forward by Colin Renfrew.
This one does make sense now when you consider the DNA.
A British archaeologist in 1987. It states that the homeland of the Indo-European language is Anatolia, where it was spoken around 8000 to 7000 BC by the very same first farmers who gradually moved across Europe and Asia, not only spreading agriculture, but their language too. Brilliant. If that's the case, that would solve our mystery in one fell swoop. It would be very likely that the peoples of Stonehenge spoke an Indo-European language. But I'm afraid that this is not backed up by the DNA evidence, which backs up the steppe theory of migration. But there's more. Third, we have some very recent groundbreaking research known as the Proto-Indo-Anatolian theory in a 2025 article in the magazine Nature entitled The Genetic Origin of the Indo-Europeans by David Reich and other authors of his team at Harvard Medical School. They agree that the Yamnaya people colonized swathes of Europe and Asia, taking the language with them. So far, so good. But the oldest Indo-European language that we have records of is Hittite.
Hittite. That's surprising to me. Man, look at that cuneiform.
In the form of cuneiform writing from around 1700 BC. The Hittites were from Anatolia, and there were other ancient Indo-European languages in Anatolia, and yet the research tells us that these Anatolians had no Yamnaya ancestry whatsoever. Also, Hittite is so different from the Yamnaya Indo-European languages that it should be categorized differently.
You know, categorization of languages of that specific area, even when you look at like Sumerian versus Akkadian, not related, even though it's like one is in the north, one is in the south, and they're really close. It's mind-blowing. I've recently made a video dedicated to some of the problems or issues or riddles, if you will, of language learning that haven't been solved. And one of these was, in fact, that we covered on the video. I'll put a link in the description after this link, because I mean courtesy link first. But one of the languages, one of the things that we talked about was language isolates, which is specifically languages that are not related to other languages, even though that includes the surrounding areas, which usually kind of paints a picture of population relocation, possibly dispersion, depending on what happens whenever there is movement of any population cluster, whether it be military, economic, or what have you. Maybe they're just running away. I mean, then they relocate to a different area. Then the other connected languages of members of the same language family die out. These remain. They're not connected to anything, and even more so, they're not connected to people around them. And that area has that a lot. It would be interesting to try and figure out why it happens so much. I guess the Middle East, or that section of the Middle East, tends to be, and I mean, even today, it's a mess. And I imagine it's been a mess for a very long time. I don't want to react to the entire video. There is still a big chunk, but it seems like he put a lot of work in the research. So I would kind of, let's consider it as a demo, an introduction. And yeah, go watch it and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining Metatron's Academy. And don't be a muppet.